All right, in this lesson right here, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at how we can properly set up our image planes so that we can model our model to look just like what our sketch artist has drawn for us.
Absolutely.
I would have to say this is probably one of the most important lessons in this entire VTM because with properly set up image planes, you're going to be able to do a much better job than working with image planes that don't line up well because that's going to leave you, the modeler, guessing quite often. And that's what we want to do right now. We want to take a lot of the guesswork out. So, Zach, if we could, before we start, go ahead and take just a minute and talk about image planes, drawing them, the importance of them.
Okay, well, basically, image planes are going to be a set of references for a 3D model. Typically, you're going to find there's going to be like a front view and a side view. Sometimes there's a top view if you're working on a car or whatnot. It just depends on what you're working on. Right now, in this case, we're going to have a front view of our alien head and a side view.
As you can see right now, Zach has sketched out me some lovely images of our alien.
They look okay, and we're going to be taking these guys and just making sure everything on them lines up properly because it's a real nightmare if you get in and you size everything up and model it to fit the side view and then find out it doesn't match the front view at all.
And go ahead and point this out. There's a couple of different ways that you can go about actually setting everything up. Of course, to begin with, you may use some sort of grid paper or rulers to make sure that all of your major features on the character line up. In other words, the eyes from the side view and the front view line up right, the mouth, the nose, etc. But, there's times where you may not have grid paper, you may have sketched something out, or your sketch artist may have drawn something out, and things don't line up 100% right, and at that point, you can rather correct things inside of Photoshop, or you can actually go into 3ds Max and correct things there as well, working with UV, WMAP, modifier, etc., etc.
Right.
But right now, Zach has, on purpose, thrown some little problems in here where the two heads may end up looking the same. Let's say once we get the top of the head and the chin matching up, then you may find that, well, the eyes on the front view are a little too high or a little too low or the mouth is not right. So at that point, by looking at it right now, I can already tell there's a problem looking at the side view of the head that the chin is drawn up a lot closer to the actual eyes, and looking at the front view, you can see the chin's a lot longer. And so these are going to be things we're going to need to fix, and when we start dealing with different pieces inside the actual character's head like this, as opposed to the image as a whole, then we run into some more complicated issues that'll be a little bit more difficult, if not impossible, to fix inside of Max.
Right, and just kind of as a side note, if you're going to try to get everything lined up as you're drawing it, that takes a little bit of skill. I am not a mechanical artist at all, so I draw everything freehand. So what I like to do is draw like this and then touch everything up in Photoshop.
And so that's what he's going to do right now. He's going to actually show you how we need to go about setting this up so that we can make sure these things match 100% and how we can alter the images to accomplish that. Zach, if you want to go ahead and start out by talking a little bit about selecting your primary image that you're going to work off of.
Absolutely. See, what we're going to be doing here is adjusting these images to where they match each other. And I really shouldn't say be adjusting both of these images because we're not. We're going to choose one of these guys to be the primary image. We're going to assume that that image is correct, and then we're going to adjust the other one to match it exactly.
So if you think about it, it's kind of ironic. Both of these images are going to end up being used as references.
Right.
But right now, we're about to pick one image that will be a reference for the other image.
Exactly.
All right, very good.
So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start off with this side drawing here, and we're going to assume that this is the correct drawing. I like the way the chin is really close. It really makes his head look rather bulbous, and we're going to use that basically as our reference. So I'm going to start with a new document. Now, if you can have any size in here, like when you come in, it's usually whatever the last thing you made was. But if you want to match,
or whatever image may have been copied to the clipboard.
Exactly. But if you ever need to go in and you need the exact size of something that's already in here, you can go under Window, Documents, and just select that, and it'll reset this. I'll just kind of give you a quick example. If we had previously made a document that was 5 by 5 inches, and then we go under Window, Documents, and we select Side Drawing, it resets it to 10, which is the same dimensions as our side drawing. So we'll click OK. We've got our new document here. And I'm just real simply going to get my Move tool out, and I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag him over into our new document. Now, holding down Shift basically just sets him in the center of the document.
Now, what you're shooting for right now is actually putting both of these images on the same document.
Exactly, and I'm going to show you why as we go along. But first, let me go ahead and get the second guy on here. Now, you'll notice if I stretch this window out a little bit, you'll notice we don't really have enough room to get him on here. So I'm going to go under Image and go to Canvas Size. And I'm going to anchor this down on the left side. And the width right now is currently 10 inches. I'm just going to go ahead and double that to 20. And if you're concerned about the size that this is going to be when we pull it into Max, we're going to be saving this out as a JPEG. It's not going to be all that large, memory-wise. So with front drawing selected, I'm going to get my move tool back out, and we're just going to drag him in.
Again, holding shift down.
Well, I didn't hold down shift this time because I didn't really want him in the center of the document. He needs to stay over here on the left side.
Very nice.
And I'm going to use my navigator and just kind of
drag out. Sorry, I didn't mean
bit.
to give you a heart attack there.
That's okay.
I just wanted to. Is there such a difference now? How did that one head get scaled down so small?
Yeah, it looks a lot smaller, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, well, they did look like they were lined up pretty much the same size when they were two separate drawings, but then you look and you notice the scale percentages. This one's at 22% and this one's at 27%.
Tricky.
And yeah, Photoshop tries to make things easy on you and sometimes ends up making it a little hard. You just got to keep things like that in mind, and it's really not that big a problem.
Oh, yeah, I guess we got to take a second and remind people out there that I am playing the role of a student, so expect me to know nothing at the moment. Which is generally how I am anyway, so hey, it's all fair and even.
We'll expect that. Let's see what we actually get. Anyway, what I'm going to need here is some guidelines so that I know whether things are scaled up properly, where everything is proportioned properly.
Almost like as if you were going to be holding a ruler actually up to that guy.
Exactly, and actually in that case we're going to need some rulers here, and there's several ways to go about doing this. You can go under
that would be view.
That's right. You go under view.
See, guys, what you don't understand is Zach is the hotkey master or hotkey king. All depends on who you ask.
I'm certainly a hotkey kind of guy.
If you mention menu bar, he goes menu who.
I don't even know there is a menu bar in most programs. I get the hotkeys memorized. In this case, the rulers are Control R, and you can make them appear and disappear.
Okay,
very
enough
nice
with the
and
magic
easy.
trick. Very nice.
It's fun, man.
I understand.
It's a hotkey.
But what good does having this ruler do to us? That's nowhere close to those heads.
Exactly. Well, this ruler, we don't really need it to be close because this ruler has a little magic trick of its own. We can click on this guy and drag down.
Oh, that is so cool.
And we get a little guideline. And you might notice,
snapping.
It's kind of snapping a little bit. What I'd like to do is set this right on the top of our alien's head. You notice we got a little bit of a snapping problem here. You'll find that quite often in Photoshop, I think it's actually a default that snap is turned on. If we shut that off, we can now grab this line and move it wherever we want to freely.
Oh, how convenient.
So I'm going to set this right on the top of our alien's head.
That's a little above the head.
All right, well, we'll move it down like an extra pixel just for Jason.
Yeah, Buzz is the pickiest person in the world. Hey, that's so much nicer.
There we go.
I like it.
Now I'm gonna. You can actually pull out as many of these as you want. So we're gonna pull out a second one, and we're gonna set it right under the chin. Is that pretty close to the chin there?
I'm happy.
Does that meet approval for the students?
I'm happy.
Okay.
Oh, that's right. Oops.
Looks good to me. All right, and the thing you're going to need to keep in mind here is that your two heads have actually been pulled in on two separate layers. So if you want to move this head around and you actually have the wrong layer selected, you're going to end up moving the wrong head. Just something to keep in mind. In fact, if you wanted to be really spiffy and really organized, you could rename these layers to side and front.
Yes.
But I typically don't do that. So what I'm going to do here is with my front view selected, I'm going to draw a marquee box pretty much just around the whole head. And under Edit, I'm going to go down to Transform and Scale. And then holding down Shift is going to give me a proportional scale. I'm going to scale him up, move him, just move and scale. Actually, that's pretty close on the first scale.
I'm impressed. Usually it takes you about 20 pulls.
Thank you.
Just kidding.
All right, and that's actually lining up pretty well, so we'll hit Enter to apply that.
Oh, so he's got the chin matching at the bottom. He's got the top of the head matching at the top. But the next question is going to be, what about the eyes?
Does the rest of it match up? Exactly. Now, I mean, if we took this into Max right now and started modeling thinking everything's fine.
It would start out fine.
It would start out fine when we rough the head out, but we might start to run into some problems a little bit later on because if we take a line and set it to the top of the eye here on our left image, we'll notice it's actually cutting right through the eyes on our right image.
I would say we would definitely run into some problems. And at this point, at the modeling stage, you would then be saying, okay, it's time to just do a little bit of personal compensation to go about correcting
That's actually translated into guesswork.
Exactly. I was just trying to give it a more professional spin.
It didn't work. Anyway, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take him and just one of my ways for handling this kind of thing is I'm just going to move him down until the tops of the eyes match. There's actually a couple of ways you can go about this. This just seems to work best for me. I'm going to use a marquee box, and I'm just going to grab the top of his head right over the eyes. I'm not going to include the eyes at all. Back under Edit, I'm going to go back to my Transform and Scale again. And I'm just going to scale up the top of his head to pull it back to that blue line.
Hey, that's a pretty nifty little trick.
And hit Enter to apply that. Now with my marquee box again, I'm just going to draw another box around the underside of his head here. around his chin area. Under Edit, I'm going to get my scale tool out one more time and just scale straight up until the chin lines up. And press Enter to apply that.
Definitely cool.
Much closer now. Everything seems to be lining up. Now we need to go ahead and keep testing. It's a good idea to use as many landmarks on your images as you can to make sure everything's lining up properly. So we'll go ahead and pull another line out. We'll go off the bottoms of the eyes. And those actually seem to be lining up rather nicely.
I'm impressed.
Now we can go under the, let's say right at the upper lip, which seems to be matching up just fine. And we'll try out the lower lip, and it also seems to match up.
So we don't need to go in there and do any more.
We don't really need to be
adjusting.
stretching anything else out. We're ready to cut this up into two separate images and get ready to turn it into some JPEGs.
Okay, I will point this out. We don't have to necessarily cut it up into two different images. We could save it out as one, and it's just a matter of shifting the image over inside of Max when you set your image planes up.
Absolutely.
But Zach likes working with two different images, so hey, I'm not here to knock his workflow. Go for it,
okay,
Zach.
well, I appreciate it this once.
Oh, yeah, right. I see that look you're giving me.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another new document. And what I'm going to go ahead and give this guy a name. We'll call it the side view. And 10 by 10 is what the side view was originally. We're basing this all off the original drawing, so that should actually be a perfect size. And then what I'm going to do here is get my marquee box out.
Do we have to do marquee box? Could we actually come back down and select the layer?
Actually, we can do that. That's exactly right. And in fact, I'll just go ahead and do that. We'll just get our marquee box away, and we'll get our move tool out, and we'll just pretty much drag him over into our new document, like so. And we'll just center him up as best we can. We're going to get to exact centering here in just a minute, but first let me go ahead and create another new document. We're going to make this the same size, and it's not all that important that it be perfectly square. We'll notice that both of these are 10 by 10, but that's going to make it just a little bit easier on us in Max because we won't have to move these images around so much.
Actually, by spending all this time making everything perfect inside of Photoshop, we're making things a lot easier for inside of Max.
We're going to make our workflow in Max just absolutely fly. So I'm going to create another document the exact same size, and back in my new document I created here.
This is where you got to be real careful. If you don't switch that other layer, you can set yourself up for a headache.
Yeah, give yourself a couple of headaches. I'm going to switch to my front view, and with my move tool selected, I'm just going to drag him over. And you'll notice those blue lines were just references. They did not come along for the ride. Because of our scaling, we got a couple of problems in here, but that's no big deal. We're not going to be modeling that. So we'll just ignore it. We'll just kind of eyeball it to get it centered. And now we're going to go ahead and take the time and get him centered directly in the middle of this page. And what that's going to do is we'll be able to take our image planes as we build them in Max and actually place these planes at 0, 0, 0 coordinates, and then the head should line up perfectly.
All right.
So using my guidelines again, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. In fact, I'm sure there are some that are a bit more efficient than this. This is just what I'm used to. This is my personal workflow. I'll set two guidelines in at 1 inch and then just pretty much eyeball him to where he's directly in. And I'm slowly going to move these guidelines in increments of tenths of an inch. And there's 0.2 of an inch. Needs to be nudged. I'm using my arrow keys to nudge, by the way. We'll nudge him over to the right a little bit. That's looking pretty good. We'll come in another 0.2. And another 0.2. This is just kind of like clamping him in until he's right in the center. And that's looking pretty good from there. That should be dead center horizontally. Now we need to set the vertical. So I'll pull this into, we'll say 0.5 inch here, and then we'll say 0.5 inch off the bottom. And that's already looking pretty good. But we'll bring it up another 0.1 of an inch. And then this one will bring down another 0.1 of an inch. And actually, it's already looking very good.
Yeah, I say that one's there.
Well, actually, the problem here is I'm basing this off the neck, and I should actually be basing it off the chin.
Yeah, that's true, because the neck's different sizes on the two.
That's fine. I'll just nudge him down, and we'll just center it up based on the chin itself. Bring this up another 0.2. Bring this one down. And a lot of people, as they do this, they find different ways to center these guys up. This is just what seems to work really well for me. And that seems to be pretty much dead on.
All right.
So I'm going to save this guy out. Go under Save As. We'll call this guy Front View.
And go ahead and change the type over to a good old JPEG.
Change him over to a JPEG. It's going to be light on the memory. Medium should be fine. We don't need this to be maximum resolution or anything. Nobody needs to see all my little pencil scratchings and all that. So we'll just click OK. He's saved. Now I'm going to close him down, and I am going to save the changes as a Photoshop file just for reference later in case I need them. If I come back and want to make changes, it's a lot easier to make changes in a Photoshop file than a JPEG. So we'll also call this front view and just save it out, and he'll go away. We don't really need him anymore. Excuse me. And now we just need to center this guy up as he was earlier. Let's go ahead and minimize him, get him out of the way, and the same with this guy. Take our guideline, and we'll start off by setting it at 1/2 inch. Pull another guideline out, set it at 1/2 inch from the end. And as you can see, he needs to be nudged over to the right just a little bit. That's looking pretty good, so we'll bring it in a little bit further, another 1/10 of an inch. And, of course, if you're working in centimeters or any other kind of measurement, you can follow along. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to bring it in one more so I know that I'm staying nice and sharp, nice and accurate, which is really going to help when I'm moving around vertices and max. All right, and that should be dead on horizontally. Now for the vertical, it already looks like it needs to be moved down, so I'm just going to kind of do that to start off with. We'll set this as 1/2 inch from the top, and then 1/2 from the bottom, and just kind of eyeball it to begin with. He needs to come down a little bit more.
And again, this time dealing with top of head to chin.
Exactly. So we're going to come down. We'll go ahead. We'll bring this down a full 3/10, and we'll bring this up 3. And you can see he needs to come down just a couple more nudges with the arrow keys. And that should really be
good.
That should be dead on. So we need to go ahead and save this out as well. We'll go to Save As, SideView.psd. We need to change this over to JPEG as well. Click Save. We'll leave it at medium. Close that out. Close this down, and we want to save these changes as a Photoshop document as well in case we need to make more changes later. Because also, when we save these as a Photoshop document, these guidelines remain and all that kind of stuff. We'll save that out. And basically, we're done with Photoshop, and we're ready to take these images over into Max and turn them into image planes.
Exactly. So you guys are about to see a real quick switch on your screen, and we're going to be back up and running here in about a fraction of a second to you guys with 3ds Max, and we'll get things set up there.
Okay.
All right, so now we've got Max up, and the whole idea is we want to come in here.
That was quick.
Well, it was extremely quick. It was almost timeless.
Absolutely.
All right, so what we want to do is come in here and set up 2 planes now and bring those images in so that we are prepared to start modeling. So, Zach, how would we go about doing this?
Well, actually, we're just going to do it the easiest way that can be done. We're just going to make a couple of planes. But we don't really need any segments in here, so we're just going to make these guys one by one. We need one in the left view and one in the front view because, as you saw from our image planes, those are the 2 views we have. And I'm just going to go ahead and draw these out. Now, by your standard Max units, I need these guys. I'm going to set these guys at 200 by 200. I want them to be square because my images were square. And 200 is just large. It gives me a lot of room to model this guy. You know, in the end, it doesn't really matter how big or small you make it. It's just that'll just determine how far you zoom in with your camera while you're working.
Zoom in with your camera. You can scale it up, scale it down.
Yeah, you can do anything. So we'll set both these guys to 200. And then we'll just make another one over here in the front view.
Or we could have just cloned it.
We could have just cloned it.
I'm sorry. I'm just giving you a hard time.
No, you're absolutely right. We could have just cloned it. And
that would
my
be...
mouse wheel just moved that. We don't want to do that. Okay, so actually we've got our 2 planes here. Zoom out. We can see them. They are both one side, but right now I need to move these guys.
Oh, no. You did.
What? What? What are you laughing at?
What did you do? Can you see what you actually just did? There's a little green thing up here. Do you have any idea what that might be?
Did I create an extra plane out there?
You sure did.
That's
Make sure to turn your creation tool off after you've got finished using it. It's an awesome example. I know you were doing just that for our beginners out there, showing them a common mistake that people make.
Absolutely. I never do stuff like that when I'm working.
Of course not.
Absolutely not. So, okay, I do need to move these guys so they're at perfect 0, 0, 0. So I'm just going to get my move tool out, and it's easiest to do this manually.
Or just right-click on the spinner.
Right, or right-click on the splinter.
I don't know. He's the splinter.
The splinter.
He's pretty quick with the old tab, though. So
there you go. So both these guys are both at 0. That's exactly what we want. And now we need to just put our textures on there and get everything all squared away.
Into the material editor we go.
Right, just click up here on Material Editor. I'm going to change the diffuse. Double-click Bitmap. And we've got we'll just start with our front.
So this means that we now have a bitmap material type that's going to be driving the diffuse channel.
Exactly. And I'm just going to go up to the parent real quick. Just to stay organized, we'll just name this material front, and we'll make it visible in the scene. We'll click two-sided in case we get it on the other side of that plane. I'll select my plane that's visible here in the front view just so I know which one it is. And we'll drag this guy down here, and boom, that was nice and easy. And we need to make a second one. We'll call this guy side.
Of course, you could have also just copied the one material over and then just changed the bitmap type. I know
exactly. I'm right there with you.
There's always 1,000 different ways to do something. I'm just throwing out tips and all that good stuff because I don't want to sit over here and just be quiet because I can't.
Well, no, that's also good because there's a lot of people who work a lot of different ways, and you're helping
it's good to hear multiple ways.
Exactly. So with that set up, we're going to set this to two-sided as well. It's already visible in the scene. We'll just drag him onto the second plane. And actually, our planes are both now visible. I'm just going to kind of move these guys off to the side to open up a workspace. A lot of people work differently. Some people actually work with these planes at the center of their scene. I don't really like to work that way because it means you don't get to see your entire object while you're working. So I like to move these guys out. And because we're going to be doing most of our work directly from the planes while we're in orthographic views, it's not going to make any difference. As you noticed here, it didn't look like our front view moved at all because there's no depth in those.
And, of course, there's other things that you could go about doing as far as working with the materials themselves. You could go in there and make them self-illuminated so that you don't have to worry about the actual tinting of the planes changing as you manipulate around the viewport as you're seeing right now.
Absolutely, but pretty much the only time that's going to be a problem is in our perspective view, and we're not going to be using the image planes as a reference while we're in perspective. As a matter of fact, if we wanted to hide these in this view, that would be perfectly acceptable.
Absolutely. Just, again, pointing out extra tips. And speaking of extra tips, in this case right here, Zach ended up making, if you remember, our images were 10 by 10 back inside of Photoshop, and then in here we're working with 200 by 200 as for each of these planes, so everything's perfect.
Right.
Which means if you saw it a second ago, as a matter of fact, Zach's already gone through all of this effort of moving these things apart, but when they were crosshairs or crossing one another, if he could throw them back there really fast.
Really fast. Well, as soon as the hourglass goes away, I will do just that.
Well, that's a interesting hourglass.
There we go. It was just kind of there to show off. We'll just...
Yeah, just exactly. And then grab that guy
on the other side, and we'll just set him to 0.
All right, now, take a look at this. So look at the top of the head, dead on, the chin.
We can just zoom right in here. We'll notice the top of the heads are lining up.
And, well, you know, the reason it may, by the way, look like it's not 100% lined up if you look at it at the top, if you really zoom in there, it's because the image, the front view is just a little bit further back or further forward. It's just a matter of adjusting frontwards back if you want to get dead on. But this is definitely close enough to do the trick. This is almost 100% dead on because of the way we went about setting this whole thing up. But
exactly.
If you want to go ahead and do, real quick, we'll just go ahead and do a couple undos real quick.
Okay.
And I just reached over here. Poor Zach just lost control for a second.
Now my whole workflow's thrown off. He's touched the keyboard. It's all over.
I'm one of those itchy kind of students that just have to get involved in everything. I'm sorry,
I never saw that coming. Anyway.
Okay. So what I do want to point out, though, is that not everybody's going to be going inside of Photoshop and adjusting their images out. And not always are you going to have a 100% matchup between your image and your actual plane that you're putting
Absolutely.
it on. So one of the things, of course, that we could have gone about doing is come in here if we wanted to and just simply come up here and drop all the way down and put a UVW map modifier on them, and then you could have come down and done a bitmap fit, and let's say we could have said, all right, we want to actually fit this to the side, since it's the side drawing that we're doing, and waiting on it there. Here it comes. Tell it okay. Now in this particular case, everything's already perfect, so there is
So we didn't see anything move.
Exactly. There is no change whatsoever. But we do have the ability to come in here if we wanted to work with the gizmo for positioning this guy around. We could simply come in here and you could grab and drag however you may want. You could go turn tiling off back in your material editor. You could come over here if you wanted to, and you could stretch it up, stretch it down. So these are just different techniques that you could use to come in here and match this guy up 100%. But of course, while you're doing this, you're going to be having these two guys still at 0, 0, 0 crossing one another so that you can line things up a little bit better.
And, we mentioned while we were in Photoshop that you could do a couple of adjustments in Max, and this is exactly what we were talking about.
Absolutely. So anyways, it's not necessary in this particular case, so what I will do is go ahead and come up here and grab this particular modifier and just simply delete it out. You'll notice, again, no change.
And for those of you watching this who can't see past the screen capture, Buzz, the student, has effectively pushed me out of the way and taken the machine over.
Which I promised that I would not do, so I will now slide back over to the side. But really, this pretty much concludes this first lesson, and I can't stress enough how important good reference images are. It always just kind of deep down in my soul bothers me when I see a student sit down to start modeling something for a real project. Like I've heard many students say, I'm working on my demo reel. Well, let me see some of your concept work. Let me see your references. Let me see. Well, it's all in my head. It's in my head, man. I know what I want to do. No, put that stuff down on paper.
Exactly.
Trust me, this will save you so much time. Trust me, I know what I'm talking about here.
Well, see, it's interesting because when I first started this, I thought I was the natural, I can get all this stuff in my head and I can build it out right. And, look at me now. I do reference images for absolutely everything I build.
And as Zach's instructor, it's quite funny because I actually remember that. I was like, put it down on paper, Zach.
Exactly.
And he now does an excellent job at it. So now that we've got this thing set up, we're ready to go ahead and progress into the next lesson where we will be roughing out the head and start talking about some actual modeling stuff.
All right.
So that concludes this lesson. Thanks, guys.